Tom, welcome to the first podcast.
Welcome.
Great to be here.
We usually get to start with, the founder kind of talking through their company a little bit of detail. So what exactly is Marqo?
So Marqo is an AI-powered product search and discovery platform. My co-founder and I started Marqo about 3 years ago, and we both came from Amazon. My co-founder, Jesse, was actually one of the lead applied scientists behind Amazon Retail Search. And what we found when we were at Amazon was that Amazon had this really high search conversion rate. So Amazon's search conversion rate is like 18%. Whereas when you look at the average e-commerce search conversion rate, it's around 3%. So Amazon was basically doing product search about 6 times better than the average e-commerce company. And yeah, we started Marqo because we, wanted to give the broader market access to similar technology so that they could improve product search and discovery.
Great. And I think we generally like to get started whereby we try and identify if there's early inclinations from the founder of entrepreneurship at an early age. And I know at 16, I think you basically developed an app that had some traction, but was there early signs of wanting to found something in those formative years?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I was always interested in kind of being kind of an inventor, building new things. I think I was always interested in technology. I think I first got interested in coding when I was about 10. And I actually thought it was the nerdiest thing you could possibly be into. And I actually hid it from my parents. I was trying to teach myself to code, and I was 10, and I was oh no, I can't let anyone find out that I'm interested in this for some reason, even though now I'm why did I even think that? It's bizarre. But I think the weird thing though, in Australia at the time, technology, there was just no one was in tech. It was just very rare, and it was sort of you just watch film movies and be some really nerdy person coding something, and I was thinking, oh, I don't want to be like that. But then what happened was when I was about 13, this guy came to our school, and he was did this presentation at lunchtime about iPhone apps. And actually the turning point for me was actually bizarrely watching The Social Network movie when I was 12. And I was oh, wow, actually tech, coding, this can actually be pretty cool.
It's not all nerds.
And yeah, so then I went to watch this presentation with this random software engineer they brought into our school to talk at lunch about how to make iPhone apps. And I decided I'd make some iPhone apps. And so got into that. I don't think I was that interested in the coding side of things, especially initially. I was just interested in the product and building products that didn't yet exist. And obviously at the time, the App Store was really heating up. There was a lot of growth, a lot of people going on there just searching for all different kinds of things and downloading apps. If you remember, this was 2011.
Yeah.
And what I noticed was that there was no app on the App Store that could that was a guide on how to make apps. And it seemed like people would be searching for that, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I basically just created this guide on how to make apps. I launched that as an iPhone app, and it did incredibly well. It was at the peak, it got to 2,000 downloads a day. It was charting on the US, on US education in the App Store, in the top 50, Australia top 50. So it was really cool to see, just and I think that really taught me that it's possible to do these things that, no one expects that you could do, as a 14-year-old, being able to launch an app that did that well was just I was okay, actually, maybe tech is a cool thing to do, and it's something that I can do
tell
really
my parents
well.
about it.
I mean, we know now that, you went to ANU, I think it was, you studied computer science, and then I think you were part of that diaspora that went to Cambridge as well. Was academia ever a thought process, even though you've had the success with the app?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I definitely went through a phase of I'm either going to do a startup or I'm going to do a PhD, because both of those things are very creative. They give you an opportunity to go and do something where the sky's the limit. You can do research, and you can do the most amazing research and invent something completely new that can change the world. And then you can also do that as a founder. Yeah. And for me, that was super interesting. But then, yeah, I ended up actually going to Amazon when I graduated, which has actually turned out to be an amazing experience. Like, I think one of the cool things was I was actually in AWS. So my co-founder was on doing Amazon retail search. I was at AWS. And it was like weirdly for the amount of revenue and the amount of users they had, it felt like quite a small team. And, we were all owning like customer facing features, and you could actually see, these features that you were rolling out were actually being used to power all of these applications that we use every day. So that was quite interesting for me. But yeah, and then basically started Marqo because I saw this opportunity to really take it to the next level and kind of do something a bit more ambitious. So that was, and yeah, we saw this opportunity obviously in e-commerce search. It was obviously a point of frustration for me as well that e-commerce search was so bad. I think like seeing, these companies that had billions in revenue that just had terrible search. You'd go onto their website and you'd look up like jeans and you get a skateboard, and it's like a company making billions of dollars in e-commerce revenue, and you're thinking like,
this can't be optimized.
Yeah, how is this possible? There's got to be a problem here.
Yeah.
And solving that problem was one of the key aims of when we started Marqo.
Was that experience of studying offshore, like when we often speak to, particularly Australian founders, it's like they had this formative experience where it's like you started to realize, I guess, through the app that you built and then going to a well-regarded school like Cambridge, like I can compete, like the world is not as scary, like, I can go and match it globally. Was that sort of a formative moment, or was it more than when you were inside of Amazon that it was like, hey, you know what? I've now got this itch that I want to go compete globally as a founder. Like when did that sort of really start to enter the forefront?
I think it's always been something I've wanted to do. I think, I just think that there's a huge amount of impact that you can have through going and founding a company, right?
Yeah.
And I've always been attracted to that. And I've always been attracted to it from the perspective of like, you can build something really incredible by, being able to actually go there and found the company and run the company, right? And so that's been the number one thing. It's like, how do I build really great products that the people are going to use, that are going to make people's lives better? And I think that's always going to kind of dominate my career. Like I would honestly, found a company even if, the amount of possible upside was, 100 times less, or, even if it was like, you got paid as much as like maybe a doctor gets paid if you do well, like that would be enough for me, to push myself, this hard. And so I just love the process of creating these products and creating new technology.
And obviously Amazon's a large org. Like, did you know Jesse before, or had you crossed paths, or was it inside of that org that you just happened to start to build a relationship? Like, how did the founding story kind of come together?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. The longer part of the story is that I had a previous co-founder. He decided to go off and do his PhD over at MIT. And so I was finding a new co-founder. And so I talked to about 80 people. I really wanted to find the best possible person. And yeah, Jesse and I connected through a mutual friend at Amazon. I basically asked everyone I knew, and then I asked all the people who those people said, who introduced me to. And the thing is, once you do that, you can cast this really wide net over, all of the different connections that you have. And when you actually think about it, it's like, okay, do you know someone who would be interested? You're looking at like 1 million people, and just by talking to 80 people, you've kind of cast your net over 1 million possible candidates almost. And I think that was a big reason why I was able to find such an amazing co-founder. I think Jesse's been instrumental to the success of Marqo. I don't think we could be anywhere near where we are right now without him. So, but yeah, basically just connected through a mutual friend from Amazon.
And was that courting process like extended, or was it like first date, let's go do this forever? Like what was the way that it kind of came about?
It's pretty quick. I mean, it shouldn't be a really drawn out process, I believe. Like, I think it's, gut feel is really important. And, it's kind of like, I sort of see choosing a co-founder a bit like a multiple choice test. It's like, you sort of get an initial answer. You're like, okay, this looks right. And you sort of circle that one. And then usually if you change your answer later, it's going to be wrong. It's like that first decision, I think of like this person, we work well together. Yep. We have the same goals. We're trying to achieve the same thing. And just going all in and making it work is the best way. And we have, an incredibly productive just way of working, and it works really well.
We like to ask this to all founders, but do you remember day one of Marqo?
I'd say day one was probably when I hired the first contractor to start working on Marqo. I hired this guy called Daniel, who still works at Marqo. He was actually a competitive programmer who was 18. He was based in Ukraine. At this point, like Jesse hadn't quit his job yet. I was still sort of talking to Jesse. I was figuring all that out, but I'd gone sort of all in full time on Marqo.
Yeah.
And it was just me and Daniel, and we were just like smashing it out.
That's awesome.
But like, I honestly couldn't have asked for a better sort of first employee. Like, he started as a contractor, but it was obviously like full time, kind of like an employee, right? We just worked incredibly well together. And he's just been an amazing person to have on board.
So it sounds like you went, I mean, because we often think about how do you prioritize everything you've got to do. It sounds like you guys went straight to product, starting to ship. Like that was sort of the first inclination rather than let's raise capital or let's go hire a big team. It was like, let's keep it lean and then just go straight into building. Is that right?
Yeah, I think choosing the initial team very carefully is important. I also think though that, you know, you can't move too slowly with it, because I've also seen a lot of startups that fail because they're almost just too selective about who they choose. Like sometimes you need to take some risks and give some people a go. We kept it like moderately lean. I wouldn't say that we were super on the lean side or super on the not lean side. It was sort of somewhere in between. But I think we probably started working on shipping product a bit too early. Like if I was doing it again as a second time founder, where I'd probably start would be at things like trade shows, conferences, like just talking to as many people as possible. Because once you really identify the exact like problem that you're trying to solve, then building the solution is much more straightforward. So I think that we started with this kind of general kind of search engine, for example. But then we realized later on, like this actually had like most of the application for it was actually in e-commerce. And so we could have started maybe with something more e-commerce focused, and we could have moved a little bit faster there. But we got there pretty quickly either way. I think just, again, like action produces information. And like I think just doing something is good. Like just go out there and build a product if that's what you think makes sense to do, or go out there and talk to customers, but just kind of do something, pick a direction, and then sort of iterate from there, I think is the most important thing.
Yeah, interesting.
Like I do want to touch on that product part of things because, one of my questions was going to be about like MVPs, right? And we've got lots of early stage founders that are listening, and obviously you guys started in search, which you just touched on. But like, how do you know, I guess, well, not necessarily always to pivot, because sometimes it's either pivoting or you might be just broadening the product architecture and building other, I guess, domains or adjacencies. But like, what are those sort of key points that you're looking for as to know when to like build into further things, right? Is it like the customer feedback? Is it proving out North Star metrics, proving out adoption metrics, etc.?
I think there's a few things. So I think that you can learn just a huge amount through having just lots of conversations. I think I didn't initially, like one big unlock for me was obviously industry trade shows, because you can talk to so many people who have so many different problems to solve. And you can really zero in on whether like your product is interesting to them, whether it's solving a problem for them. It's just been incredible to like go to those industry trade shows, and it's still a huge part of our go-to-market. Well, it is the biggest part of our go-to-market, actually, industry trade shows. And it's great from the perspective of both getting information to develop the product. You can go to talks, you can listen to what people are saying and understand that. But then you can also, once you then understand what people are looking for, what kinds of problems they're trying to solve, it's really easy to then sell the product to the customer as well. So obviously we look for the sort of high level metrics, right? So like the sort of standard B2B SaaS metrics, like, are customers churning? Are they increasing revenue, year on year on the product? Then, what does your sales pipeline look like? How do people respond to your demo? I think all of that is really important. I think we've been very lucky in the fact that it's hard for us to have kind of fake customers, if that makes sense. Like I think a lot of B2B SaaS, like you can kind of do a really good pitch to a bank, and then they buy the solution, and that's some kind of like, I don't know, SaaS solution for process management. They buy the annual contract, never really gets properly adopted, and then they kind of churn the next year. The good thing about search and product discovery is that it requires integration. So they actually have to commit, they integrate it, and if the integration's good, then it kind of stays there, because there's nothing else, like unless there's a better solution that someone wants to come and bring in, it's like, so you kind of know that there's working because people are using it. They've
Yeah.
integrated it. It's running the search. And then you can also look at like metrics like how much is this actually improving revenue for the website, you know? And that's actually a really core part of our process of onboarding customers. We always look at like after the customer onboards, what's the actual revenue uplift?
Yeah.
That can either be established through an A/B test or an AA test, but we always want to make sure that we're actually delivering value.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think if I was to summarize, like our customers getting value, our customers using the product, and then, you know, also just like how do customers respond further up the funnel as well? Like, are we solving a problem that a lot of people are looking to solve?
It's interesting though, because I guess, you know, what you guys have built is like enterprise forged, right? Like you're working with such large, really impressive names now. And it sounds like, I think, you know, that's always been the intention. It's like, we're going to do this. We're going to go work with some of the world's most, you know, innovative brands and sort of e-commerce sites. How do you go through that early iteration, I guess, because, you know, you've got a lot of surface area you want to cover. You want to have a lot of feature set to kind of truly displace what might be not a great solution, but something that's very embedded. Search has been around a long time, but obviously it wasn't a solved problem. Like, how did you guys think through that early on? Was it through design partnerships or starting smaller? Like, how did you build up to the quality and size of names you're now working with?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess we started again more in the sort of developer tool space.
Yeah.
Which I think is it's an interesting space. I think one of the things I would say to anyone looking to build in the developer tool space is be really careful about your value proposition. Your value proposition cannot be that your solution is more usable than other solutions, like generally, right?
Interesting.
Almost all of the successful developer tools companies have like a better value proposition than that. And usually it's actually cost optimization. So what you do is you say, okay, you're paying $40 million a year right now for Datadog. We can come in, give you a better platform, and you're only going to have to pay 10 million, right? And usually, so that's usually the sort of playbook for developer tools. What we were doing though is we were making search way better. And so what we realized is there's not really a good executive buyer for like making search operate better with better technology. So what you have to do within the technology space, it's sort of halfway between like the CTO and the sort of business owners. What we realized is that we need to pivot our value proposition just completely into the business owner. So we had to take out all of the technical language out of our marketing and how we explain the product and really just center it on the value. So for example, what we'll do is we'll actually, you know, and it's coming back to that, even just the initial idea that we had around, like even what I said initially around like, you know, you search for jeans and you get a skateboard. That's just the case for so many e-commerce companies. And so what we do on the first call with every prospect is we take them through a demo and we're actually able to show a side-by-side demo of what the Marqo search looks like. We scrape the product catalog and then we show what their search looks like. And in so many cases, there's just so many bad examples. There'll be like a jeans company and you'll search for jeans and you get a t-shirt, you know, it's and this is just due to the fact that search technology right now, like the legacy search providers out there just have built their stack back in 2010.
Yeah.
It's not based on AI. And so I think basically that, yeah, focusing on that business user, I think has been really important. I think explaining the value proposition in a way that resonates with the target customer is really important.
Do you want to talk through, like, I know we've really focused on search in those early days, but do you want to talk to like what the actual product architecture looks like today? Like what can you guys do today?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of Marqo right now, we're a full search and product discovery platform. So that means everything from search to recommendations, and then obviously things like merchandising, product listings pages. Where Marqo, from a technology perspective, really stands out is the fact that we have built our stack in 2022. And that was kind of when ChatGPT was coming out. It was when a lot of this AI innovation was becoming available. We kind of thought through like, how can we build this search system? It sort of just start from scratch and just build the search system using the latest technology. And obviously that took a little while. It took like over a year to like really just pin down how to do that. But then what happened was, because we had a fundamentally different approach to the other legacy providers, is that we suddenly started getting, like, once we kind of got it right, we started getting these huge uplifts of like 19%, you know, increase in search revenue per user, for example. But I think, basically Marqo also tracks the user interaction data as well. So Marqo constantly updates. So whenever someone is like, clicks on a product or whenever someone searches something, it's constantly learning based on all of that information that it's ingesting. And so using that plus the sort of general AI intelligence, you go from having a search system that shows you maybe a t-shirt and some jeans when you search jeans, right? To, it's not only getting the relevance correct, it's showing jeans and what maybe your query was embroidered jeans or colorful embroidered jeans. It can do all of that. But then what you're also seeing is that the conversion, it's also adjusting based on conversion and based on the user. So it's actually showing not only colorful embroidered jeans when you search for that, but it's also showing a really good ranking of like, this is the product, this is the colorful embroidered jeans that you're most likely to purchase given your user profile and the overall site data. So yeah, Marqo basically has really good retrieval, really good tracking of user interaction data. And yeah, the other thing that we've actually recently launched is agentic product discovery.
Interesting.
And so the concept behind agentic product discovery is that when you look at something like, let's say, so ChatGPT is kind of just like a chatbot, and that works quite well, but I think that when people have seen that, they've been like, okay, let's put that into the e-commerce experience, and let's just like put a chatbot in the bottom, bottom corner of the screen, and let's just hope that people kind of use it and try to interact with it to find products. And this doesn't work. It's just disconnected from the overall experience. E-commerce websites are also like a very finely oiled machine. So like they've been designed over like 25 years to really optimize for conversion and let people browse and view different options. So we can't just move directly from that to like a chatbot based experience or expect someone to use a chatbot in the bottom corner. That doesn't work. What agentic product discovery is it's an adaptive approach to integrating AI holistically into the experience. So an example of this would be you search for blue dress, and let's say that's already a query that works really well. It converts well just with normal search. It's just going to show you normal results. But then if we say the user searches for, let's say, something to wear to a wedding in Italy, right? It's going to then completely change the approach. So rather than showing your search results, it's going to show you things like a summary that guides you a little bit. So it says, okay, if the wedding's more formal, you could wear something like this. If the wedding is less formal, it could be like this. It can also prompt you to answer certain questions as well, while still showing you results, right? So you've still got the opportunity to convert the customer, but like it's going to maybe ask you, are you, if they're a new user, maybe it's like, are you a man or a woman? Okay, so you select man, and then it's like, okay, here are three different kinds of, like you could wear a more formal suit, you could wear some of these shirts, you could wear some of these more formal pants, and it can kind of curate the whole experience around that. But what it's doing though, and this is the really key part, what the agentic discovery does is it only shows things to the user depending on the probability of conversion. So again, it'll show just general search results if that converts well, but it will bring in other components as well, depending on how users interact with them and what converts best. And what we're really trying to build towards is actually an entire website or discovery experience within an e-commerce store, which will actually allow you to use generative AI to just like change the entire user experience depending on how the user interacts with it. So you have this like concept of almost like a self-optimizing e-commerce website that adapts both to the user and to the brand. And I think that this is all now possible with generative AI. And I'm super excited for agentic discovery. It's also a great product because of the fact that it learns based on conversion. If showing an AI summary for most queries, it doesn't actually improve the performance. It just learns to do that automatically. It will just show search results. If showing an AI summary and showing carousels and showing buttons for every query is great, it will do that. If it's for certain queries, it'll do that, or any combination in between as well.
That's super interesting. And I mean, you're speaking to these e-commerce brands, daily at the moment. How are they thinking about the foundational models and the role that they're going to play? Because obviously we've just seen all the announcements around Stripe and embedded sort of commerce and sort of click through all within, say, an OpenAI format. Like, what are brands thinking about that? Like, are they like, this is great, this is going to create more revenue for me? Or is it like, hey, now I need to think much more carefully around my experience because I've got the risk of kind of being sort of intermediated in a way that could sort of reduce the relevance of me as an actual underlying kind of provider of that commerce?
Yeah, it's a super interesting question. And basically, what's quite interesting is that if you go back to 2000, you could actually probably say and I mean, a lot of people were saying that Google would basically replace the need for e-commerce websites. Because if you can search on Google for a product, why wouldn't you just use Google Shopping? You find the product, you purchase that. And you don't really need any sort of search and product discovery within the e-commerce storefront, right? And you could have said that in 2000. And, Google did try to go into this. It didn't really work. And there's a few reasons for that. And so these e-commerce storefronts are great because you can provide this kind of immersive experience, which is both personalized to the brand. So the brand can actually have if you're buying a boat, you can have a special experience that kind of guides you through that, allows you to search in specific ways. If you're buying clothes, it'll be personalized or also, adapted to the brand as well. And users really like that. They like this idea of going to like an online store and sort of browsing and viewing things. Product discovery is not just about finding things. And so the same is kind of true for something like ChatGPT because, you could make the argument that people will find products on ChatGPT and just purchase them. But I think history shows that users actually enjoy this kind of shopping experience. And brands actually like to build these experiences as well because it allows them to own the data so they can actually own the customer relationship as well. And in fact, apps are actually having a huge resurgence right now. Apps are actually growing a lot. And it's because, these customers genuinely like these like experiences that are personalized to the brand. And ChatGPT just can't replicate that. So I think that there's definitely I don't think e-commerce storefronts are going anywhere in the future, but I do think that there's a lot from generative AI that we can take and actually bring into the e-commerce experience.
But I also think it probably creates this very interesting why now moment, right? Because you could probably argue in commerce over the last, call it 10 to 15 years since kind of mobile was a thing initially, that not to say things stagnated, but it sort of felt there was a lot of repetition. It was like everyone was sort of overly optimized almost and things started to look and feel very similar. It almost feels like you've got an open playing field again where brands are having to think, okay, well, how do I go build that experience that's going to be really immersive, but equally differentiated versus, these very broad-based ambitions that others may have. So it's probably a really interesting time to be building that technology, I would have thought.
I think I was going to add, but I think we spoke 3 to 6 months ago on a call, right? And you were kind of saying, here's what I'm hearing, Alex, and all these trade shows. And it did feel like all of a sudden there's these tailwinds behind commerce. And then there's all this demand because it's like, not everyone's going to be in the camp that, hey, like all transactions are going to go through ChatGPT now. That's not how most people shop. They go through and they search and they look and they ideate and they come back later. And to your point, like that's where if you can improve like the PDP, the visuals, the carousels and make it more refined and fluid and more specific to that end user, that's super, super interesting. And it just seems like the next kind of chasm for what is going to happen in commerce.
Yeah. And in fact, like things like GEO are having incredibly limited impact on e-commerce. I don't actually know any examples right now of e-commerce brands that have like sort of brought on a GEO solution, like generative search optimization solution. Basically, these solutions like SEO, but it makes you kind of better on ChatGPT. Yeah, this is not something that e-commerce brands have seen any measurable improvement that I've seen so far on, and I think it's just because people don't shop that frequently on ChatGPT. They do sometimes. It's kind of almost the same as Google Shopping. It's like, you sometimes maybe look at Google Shopping and you're like, okay, look, maybe actually that looks good. But a lot of the time you're actually going to the website. Yeah. And in fact, if you think about, at least the way I shop, it's like I have a lot of brand loyalty in certain brands. So I'll go to the specific brand's website and look for products, right?
Totally.
And there's only, I think also with just having to scrape all of the data as well. There's always kind of issues and things like you can see it in Google Shopping where the products often do have these issues with them. It's a very hard problem to solve. And like I was trying Perplexity shopping the other day and it was terrible. It just gave me entirely wrong results. It took about 5 seconds to load. This was in the comment browser. It was like 5 seconds to bring up results. The results were incorrect. And yeah, and it only showed me like 5 results. Right. So it's like, I don't know, like that's
We're not there yet.
Yeah. Doesn't feel right.
But this is not, yeah. I think that they can make it better, but I think ultimately like the brands do have a really strong incentive to build out these experiences, and you can even see it in like for example, these apps that these brands have. They just give people a 15% discount, and they say download our app, and then the user will often like convert and start using the app, and then they've got a basically like recurring revenue because the user's constantly using the app. And that's exactly what the brand wants to incentivize, right? They don't want people to be on Perplexity looking at all these different products because they might go and purchase a product from a different brand. So there's a huge incentive for brands to own that experience. And there's also just a whole multitude of reasons why it actually works so much better for the brand also to own the experience.
For sure.
So everything that you've kind of like just detailed there, right? Like in terms of these product enhancements, like, what does that look like from, I guess, a timeline perspective? And does it actually shape things differently for you guys internally in terms of, hey, we need this type of talent in now, whereas we didn't really need that in the past, or like we need to be going after these types of customers, whereas we didn't really focus on those types of customers in the past?
It's interesting. It's definitely shaken up the product roadmap. Like I think we've had to, I think when we first moved into e-commerce, we were just obsessed with having just the best search results, the best data. Let's just convert users. Let's build the most intelligent search we can. And one of the things that we've spent a lot of time developing this year is just really good tools for merchandisers as well. And so people can go in and manually change things. And also it's really important for the business that merchandisers actually have these tools, because there's a lot of artistry that goes into building out an e-commerce brand and an e-commerce storefront that AI can't yet capture. So providing these tools is really important. And so that's been a big area that we've invested in this year. And I think I sat down the team at, I think it was probably March. And I said, like, you know what, merchandising cannot be like, has to be a superpower of Marqo, right? And so since then, we've just had a huge push towards merchandising tools, and now we have, the best merchandising tools available in the market.
But it sounds like the ambition continues to grow. Like it feels like because of that point in time that we're at, where it's like there's probably going to be a whole bunch of value capture out there, right? How do you think about then team build out? Like for you guys now, is it very much centered around single market? US is really the commerce center, like that's where you're going to go? Or is it we're going to build distributed, and how have you guys thought about that, given commerce is a global problem statement?
Yeah, I mean, where we started, firstly, we've seen incredibly rapid growth this year. I think we're on the way to 6xing our revenue from the start of the year, and we started on a decent base of revenue as well. And so we're now, like, obviously US and Australia is where we kind of started at the start of the year. We were like, okay, let's focus on those 2 markets. Yep. Now we're actually starting to expand internationally as well. So we've recently hired an AE who's going to be focused on LATAM, and an SDR who's also focusing on LATAM. We're actually looking at creating an office in Chile, actually, in Santiago. And that would be kind of a technical support hub, both for the US and also for LATAM as well. Yep. So yeah, LATAM is a huge opportunity for us right now. We're also seeing, obviously, Canada, UK. Starting in January, we're gonna be making a push into Europe. So we're launching that at Shop Talk Lux, which is like a sort of more Europe, Middle East conference. Well, it's based in Dubai, so it's gonna be more in that geographical region.
Yep.
So Europe is, and we've got someone in Italy now on the sales team. So yeah, we're absolutely branching out internationally.
Yeah, interesting.
I mean, as we start to look to wrap up here, I feel like you guys were one of the early sort of AI/commerce companies out there. If you kind of give yourself a review of the last nearly 4 years, like what's that been like? Because it feels like There must have been some form of like early education piece with those early design partners and customers about like what are the capabilities here to improve search. And now everything that you're saying today is just so impressive, right? And like you continue to build out. Like what are some like key learnings about building in the commerce space?
Well, I think when we first started, we were spending a lot of time talking about the technology because we have this amazing technology and we're like, oh yeah, we've got to like tell people how great it is and explain it to them and like make sure they understand it. But that proved to be just like the complete incorrect way of doing things. And so what we do now is in every sales, every engagement that we have with customers, we always start with the problem. It's like, okay, here's how your search is not working correctly and here's how the Marqo search is. And like, here's the user experience. Here's where we can take the search experience of the website, not, what technology can we bring in? And if you show them an amazing experience and you can actually, we do things like, we do obviously that demo on their data. We're the only search provider actually in the market right now who, like on the first call, we have a demo which is on their data, which actually they can also call out queries. They're like, okay, so what happens if and we encourage it. It's like, okay, like give it a hard query. Like, and they'll be like, oh yeah, can you search for like vintage lampshades or something, or like blue vintage lampshades. Oh, can it do that? And it always does it perfectly. So we love customers to do that. And it's always like, they're like, wait, and you guys have configured this in 5 minutes and like, we couldn't do this in 5 years, it's, so I think that's, just starting with the problem and then showing customers where you can actually take them, with the solution as opposed to talking through the technology is really important.
Couple more questions, and this is like slightly controversial, but I think obviously we've been on this journey for some time. I speak to a lot of founders in Australia, especially those that are building within AI, and there's always this decision about, do I have to come to the Bay Area to build like an AI company? Obviously, you guys have somewhat bridged the gap, right? You're up here, and I think Jesse's in Melbourne, right?
Yep.
What's your take on that? We speak to a lot of these founders, and they're like, do we stay in Australia? Do pre-seed, seed, get a bit of like, traction, etc., wait for some pull? Or do you think you actually have to be up in this area right now, just given everything that's happening up here?
I think it really depends, honestly. Like I think some founders can go well just in Australia. I'd say if you've got just like a small amount of pre-seed funding, might make more sense to be in Australia a bit more because it's a bit cheaper maybe at times. But I think that moving out to the Bay Area has been a huge unlock for me. And it's everything from like, I've had friends who started their company, after me, started their startup and, they were like, oh, I don't know how to do this. I'm trying to figure it out. And like, you'll be around these people in the Bay Area and then suddenly they come back 2 years later and they're like, oh yeah, I'm on 50 million ARR. And you're like, it's like, and then you get to learn from that because it's such a good learning experience to see someone go through the journey because you actually get to see, okay, because I think people often rewrite the story later on. They say, oh, this is what we were going to do. We always knew that and this is the direction. But seeing their journey throughout that is really good to see. And I think just surrounding yourself with other people who are doing the same thing, which you can easily do in the Bay Area and people who are doing it, also, doing it really well as well. And you just get to learn so much. And I think that's been a huge part of the journey as well.
Final question for the founders that are listening. Are there any final learnings, war stories, lessons that you could impart on them?
It's a good question. I think that trusting your own judgment is really important. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that where I've made mistakes, it's always been bringing in someone who I think is more knowledgeable or more senior and kind of not using, like, you want to use those people as a resource to say, okay, what should we do? They say, okay, I think we should do this. Mm. And then you kind of think through it yourself, right? And then you go, okay, yep, let's go and do that. You don't want to ever sort of blindly trust someone who's an expert, I think. So I think trusting your own common sense on things, if something doesn't make sense to you, even if someone who you perceive as more knowledgeable says that that's the right thing, you should dig into that and figure it out first and then go and do it, So I think using common sense is really important. I think surrounding yourself with people who are also culturally aligned with the company is really important. Like, that's by far the most important thing. I really underestimated that when I started, which is just like hiring someone who's really smart but not aligned and not motivated is just a huge mistake. And yeah, I'd say those were a couple of the key takeaways I think I've had over the last 2 years, I'd say. Yeah.
Awesome. Tom, thanks for joining us on the first.
Thank you, mate.